A leafy green canopy stretches as far as the eye can see. Birds tweet merrily in the branches. A light breeze rustles the leaves, whispering secrets only the trees can understand. This is what most of our planet looked like until about 120 million years ago. Up until then, the Earth had been a lush green forest, since trees first evolved around 390 million years ago. But today, forests cover just under 31% of the Earth's surface. What would our world look like without all those trees? To answer that question, we need to take a look at how exactly trees benefit us and the environment. And the first thing that comes to mind is the oxygen they provide. Well, thanks to them, or really thanks to their leaves. Plants in general, including trees, release oxygen as a byproduct of photosynthesis. During this process, they convert sunlight, carbon dioxide, and water into energy and release oxygen as a byproduct. A single mature tree can provide enough oxygen to sustain 2 people for a year. In fact, the world's trees produce about 2.6 trillion tons of oxygen each year. That's more than enough for everyone on the planet. However, that doesn't mean we should chop down all the trees because they're kind of necessary for photosynthesis. For example, lots of electronic devices contain rare earth metals such as neodymium, lanthanum, and tantalum. These elements are called rare earth because they're actually quite common, but because they're found in low concentrations, mining them is challenging and expensive. Some of these rare earths are used to create super strong magnets that are used in everything from smartphones to wind turbines. So although trees may seem like an endless resource, they're not. We have to plant them and wait years, even decades, for them to grow so we can harvest their wood. So let's say, hypothetically, all the trees on Earth disappeared overnight. What would happen? Without trees, we'd have to find another building material to replace wood. Wood is a versatile material that's strong, lightweight, and durable. It's also renewable since trees grow back after being harvested. People use wood for everything from houses and furniture to paper and food. But there are other building materials such as brick, concrete, and steel. While these materials are strong and durable, they're also more expensive than wood and require more energy to produce. Steel production alone accounts for 7% of the world's carbon emissions. Plus, it's non-renewable since it comes from iron ore, a finite resource. So we'd definitely feel the pinch if all the trees on Earth vanished. But we'd manage to build homes and other structures from alternative materials. But it's not just oxygen and building materials that we'd lose if all the trees disappeared. Trees play an important role in preventing soil erosion. Their roots bind the soil together and help prevent it from washing away during heavy rains or winds. Without trees, topsoil would be more likely to erode, which would make it harder for plants to grow. Farmers would have to use artificial fertilizers and other methods to prevent their crops from washing away. And all that extra fertilizer would eventually end up in the ocean, causing algal blooms and depleting the oxygen in our waterways. Fish and other aquatic life would die, and we'd have to find new sources of protein. So, yeah, no trees means no food. Of course, humans aren't the only ones who'd suffer if all the trees disappeared. Many animals rely on trees for food and shelter. Birds build their nests in the branches, and squirrels stash their nuts in tree holes. If all the trees disappeared, these animals would have to find new homes or starve to death. There are plenty of animals that rely on trees for food. For example, sloths eat nothing but leaves and are extremely slow because their metabolism has adapted to only eating low-nutrient vegetation. Since they spend all their time in trees, they've developed long, curved claws to grip branches and big, bushy tails to keep them upright. But sloths aren't the only animals that rely on trees. Almost every rainforest animal depends on trees in some way. Take the harpy eagle, for example. These massive birds of prey have powerful beaks and talons that allow them to hunt monkeys, sloths, and other animals. They also have excellent eyesight, which allows them to spot prey from miles away. But without trees, the harpy eagle would have nowhere to live or hunt. They'd be forced to find new habitats or die off like many other animals. But what about the plants that grow in trees? There are all sorts of plants that grow on trees, from the epiphytes that grow on the branches to the vines that climb the trunks. Epiphytes such as bromeliads and orchids don't have roots in the soil, but instead grow on other plants for support. Vines such as pothos and English ivy, on the other hand, have roots in the ground, but grow long tendrils that allow them to climb high into the trees. All these plants depend on trees for support and access to sunlight. Without trees, they'd have to find new ways to grow or die off. Of course, trees aren't just important for the animals and plants that live in them. They're also important for the environment as a whole. Trees help regulate the global climate by absorbing carbon dioxide and releasing oxygen. They also provide shade, which can help reduce the urban heat island effect. Without trees, cities would be even hotter than they are now, and we'd have to spend more money on air conditioning. Trees also help prevent flooding by absorbing rainfall and snowmelt. When it snows, the water fills the tiny spaces between the tree's branches and twigs and slowly melts. The melted water seeps into the ground and eventually makes its way into rivers and streams. This helps to regulate the flow of water and prevent flooding. Without trees, water would flow over the surface of the ground and quickly make its way into the nearest river or stream. This can cause flash floods and other problems. Trees also help improve air quality by removing pollutants such as ozone, carbon monoxide, and sulfur dioxide. They do this through a process called phytoremediation, which literally means healing or cleaning up the environment with plants. Trees can remove these pollutants from the air through their leaves, stems, and roots. Once the pollutants are inside the tree, they're either broken down by enzymes or stored in the tissues of the tree. This helps to improve air quality and protect the health of humans and animals. As you can probably tell, trees are pretty important to our survival. But what would happen if all the trees in one area disappeared? Say a forest fire swept through a particular area and wiped out every single tree. First, the animals that lived in the forest would have to find new homes. After all, there'd be nowhere to live there anymore. Of course, some animals would be more affected than others. For example, species that live in the canopy would be hard-pressed to find somewhere else to live. Animals such as the harpy eagle would have to migrate to a new habitat or starve to death. And without trees, the plants that grew on them would also die off. Epiphytes such as bromeliads and orchids couldn't survive on the ground, and vines would have to find new support structures. The soil would also be more likely to erode without the trees to hold it in place. This would make it harder for any plants that tried to grow there in the future. And if all the trees in an area disappeared, the climate would be significantly affected. The temperature would rise since trees absorb carbon dioxide, which helps regulate the global climate. Without trees, there'd be more carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, and the area would become much warmer. It would also rain less since trees release water vapor into the atmosphere. Less water vapor means less rain. So as you can see, trees are pretty important to the environment. So let's hope they're around for a long time to come. Now watch. What if the sun didn't exist? Or check out, what if all the water on Earth disappeared?